The hour of 6:35 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Joint Planning Board and Planning Licenses and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keens YouTube channel. The video is also streamed on the city's website and posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the home page and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Will staff please conduct the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the Planning Board, Harold Farrington.
Here.
Roberta Mastrogiovanni.
Here.
Mayor Jay Khan. Councillor Mike Remy.
Here.
Sarah Vazani. Ryan Clancy.
Here.
Kenneth Cost.
Here.
Armando Rangel.
Here.
Stefan Mayu.
Present.
Randon Markelon. Tammy Adams. And Michael Hafer.
Here.
Great, thank you. We only have one item on our agenda tonight, but before we get to that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the March 11th, 2024 meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair, that was my bad. For PLD, Kate Bosley.
Yes, here.
Phil Jones.
Present.
Bobby Williams.
Here.
And Ed Haas.
Here.
Great. Thank you. We'll get back in the swing of things, I think. Is this our first joint committee back with Mary?
Yep, yeah, it is.
Very happy to have you back. All right, so we're going to jump into our approval of the meeting minutes from the March 11th, 2024 meeting. I'm hoping for a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Khan, second by Councillor Jones. Anyone have any questions or amendments for the minutes? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. And then jumping right into our continued public workshop for Ordinance O-2023-16A relating to permitted uses in the downtown core, downtown growth, and commerce districts. Petitioner, City of Keene Community Development Department proposes to amend Section 8.3.2 of Article 8 in the Land Development Code to add definitions for charitable gaming facility and amend Table 8-1, Table 4-1, and Table 5.1.5 to display charitable gaming facilities as a permitted use in the Downtown Growth District and Commerce District. In addition, the petitioner proposes to amend Section 8.4.2.c.2.a of Article 8 of the Land Development Code to remove drive-through uses as permitted use by the special exception in the Downtown Core District. So with that being said, we have had a round of discussions about this ordinance, and it was sent to council and sent back here for continued effort to massage it, to get it to where we want. In that opening, it does mention charitable gaming facilities in the Downtown Growth District. However, I think it was the direction of this committee to ask staff to bring us back some amendments to the original proposal.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to probably hop up and see if I can turn the TVs on for you all, because I've got a short presentation that I think will help set out some details here. Sorry.
My ears must be plugged. I could introduce Stefan.
While we're taking a second to get our tech up and running, the mayor would like to introduce our new planning board member.
Yes. Well, the planning board probably has met Stefan Mayhew. And Stefan, feel free to take the mic for a moment to just to explain your background. Stefan was approved at the last city council meeting to serve on the planning board.
Met many of you over the years. My name is Stefan Mayu. For you, those of you that don't know me, I currently work as the assistant town planner for the town of Swansea, and I've been in Keene approximately 5 years or so, and I'm happy to be a part of the board.
Wonderful, welcome. Everyone from PLD would love to get a chance to work with you, and we're excited to have you.
Thank you kindly.
I feel like we've got some
Yeah, looks like we're still having some difficulties.
disco.
So I'll talk for a moment while we try and figure out what's going on with the, so as you noted, we brought you a draft ordinance, O 2023-16A, that had a definition and located all of the potential charitable gaming facilities in the downtown growth and commerce districts. And that was the direction that we thought we were going in. And then we came back and council indicated, PLD and the whole council indicated, hey, let's take this back. We're not super happy with that. And so planning staff went back to the workshop, and we looked at a number of ordinances across the state, as well as sort of trying to figure out where maybe the more appropriate locations are. Now, I will start by saying that we're planning to submit a B version. So this will be another evolution. Yeah.
So I've been instructed that if you join the Teams and do screen share, he can get it to work.
It'll work. Okay, that's my fault, sorry.
No, it's, he's not sure why the TVs are doing that.
Exciting. One moment. Apologies.
Yes.
I'm going to break a rule here. See if I can make this work.
Oh, that's actually better.
Whatever I did. Hey, all right. Okay, I'm gonna switch over to this. And I apologize, it doesn't have any fancy. Oh, no, this is the old one. Oh, no, it's not, okay. So, I'll just start the presentation here. So this was the definition that we came to council, or to you all, and then took forward to council and to PLD before. Basically saying that what we were doing was regulating to the definition of charitable gaming facilities already existing in the RSAs. There was some question about historic horse racing, which is a type of gambling, but we feel that's covered in this definition, as it is a subsidiary license to these two licenses. So the changes we're proposing actually fit on one little map. First is a location change. Instead of having it in all of Commerce and all of downtown growth, we're removing it completely from the downtown, and we're proposing to locate it in 3 portions of the Commerce District. First is along West Street, and there's a definition that I can walk through if you'd like, but it's essentially West Street Commerce District properties that are front on West Street. That simple, nothing too complicated there. Winchester Street, Upper Winchester Street from basically 101 to Island Street, again, commerce properties that front directly on Winchester Street. And then the third option is commerce zone districts within Ashbrook Plaza. So basically front on Ashbrook Road, which enters into that plaza there, although that is a set of condominiums, so the public road ends before sort of the Target area and Home Depot area there. But it does cover that entire parcel. So those are the 3 areas that we're proposing. They're zoned commerce, they front on major roads, and they already have large spaces and large buildings. They're sort of our large commercial areas. So that was our thought there. And by the way, I'm happy to stop me anytime, happy to take questions. If you want to look at any other parts of the city, I can pull up the zoning GIS map and we can talk through alternatives. But now I'm going to jump into our use standards. Well, okay, so I guess I jumped ahead there. So the use standards, this is a lot of text. Yeah, go ahead.
Can we have a question?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this may touch on it, but I was thinking that it might be even smaller than what you're showing once you applied some of the rules.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think 2 rules, the first rule that I did not add here that Mary charitably helped me with one of the definitions of, that I had, which was you can't have 2 charitable gaming facilities within 1,000 feet of each other or something like that on the same parcel. And she was like, why not just change it to you can only have 1 charitable gaming facility per parcel. Much simpler, much more straightforward. So I removed, I don't have it here, but that's our first point is that 1 charitable gaming facility per parcel.
So will that be added?
Yes,
When
yeah,
that-
that text will be added, yep. And then through here, no charitable gaming facility shall be located within 500, I've read it there, X that out, not true. No charitable gaming facility shall be permitted within 500 feet of any place of worship, child daycare center, or public or private school. No charitable gaming facility shall be permitted within 500 feet of any single-family or 2-family dwelling. So that's not, that's very specific to those 2 dwelling types. But then, no charitable gaming facility shall be located directly adjacent to any residential zoning district. So that's low density 1, medium density, high density 1. Yeah.
Counselor Remy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the version in the packet does actually include the language that you're
Oh, it does.
referencing
So,
around the only
Mary
one per lot.
fixed that up before it went out.
But you mentioned striking the 500 feet between facilities. I would recommend keeping
it,
that.
okay.
If there
Across
are
a
2 separate
parcel.
lots that are right next to each other, it still might be accomplishing the same thing, because I can subdivide anything I want, right?
True enough, yeah.
I agree with Counselor Remy.
Okay, we'll keep both.
Counselor Haas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 500-foot number, and I've seen it elsewhere, is for the single-family and the residential district for other casinos around the state. I'm a little uncomfortable with that distance between 2 gaming facilities. That's awful close. That's within a block, could be adjacent lots. Is there some reason that 500-foot number is applicable here? Could it be 1,000 feet?
it could be any number we want. I don't, that's not set by anything. The idea is we do want to allow, I mean, our theory is we want to have a district that works in. If you make it large enough, you create a situation where
Sure,
only one is
sure.
allowed per area.
1,000 feet's not, doesn't really exclude somebody from being within that district. It would be accommodated in some places.
Sure.
May I continue?
Yes.
I should have jumped in before, and I didn't research the zones enough, but how about the streets you name, how about Martel Court or Kit Street? Are they potential areas?
They could be absolutely potential areas. Again, they're commerce zone, they are zoned commerce, totally possible. The one thing I would say is, off the top of my head, Martel Court has pretty difficult access. But that's really, again, that's for them to attempt to fix.
Nothing a roundabout can't cure.
It also has residential housing.
Right, close by.
True.
Yeah, that is true.
Thank you.
So let's try to get through
Yeah.
with staff,
Perfect.
the different
Use standards here.
standards here, and then
Yeah.
we'll come back to the
Okay.
beginning and go through.
So again, if you have the packet with you, I am just going through that. Thank you, Counselor Remy, for reminding me that you've all seen this now. So minimum square footage, I'll be honest, we are taking this directly from another community in New Hampshire, but we really like the minimum area of 20,000 square feet, and that's just the gaming floor. That doesn't include their backroom areas, and it also doesn't include other accessory uses like restaurants, entertainment, and those would all need to be, they would need to meet any additional requirements existing for those uses in the Land Development Code. So that's pretty straightforward. The 20,000 square foot, sort of what we're trying to say there is we don't want small establishments. If they're gonna come here, we want it to be a sizable facility. And hearkening back to a conversation I think that was had before PLD, they invited a gentleman from the enforcement branch of the State Gaming Commission, and he mentioned that they have trouble seeing profitability from smaller facilities anyway. So again, just sort of looking out for Keene and looking out for uses in the area. That's where we set that number. And then parking and traffic, again, I went into a bunch of detail, and then Mary and Evan walked me back on a lot of these, mentioning that we do have parking standards already existent in the LDC, so we reference back to those, but I think a lot of the things that I wanted to point out were the types of uses that are occurring in those areas, and the types of vehicles that are going there. We expect to see buses and that sort of thing, and so there's a lot of reference to screening for buses, as well as making sure that there's parking accommodation for buses. And then also screening from any abutting residential properties, and those would be those higher density properties that could be nearby, or at least could see the area. And then just sort of a plug for our attempt to get towards zero emissions, that 2% of required parking spaces shall be equipped with electric vehicle charging stations.
Great.
And that's it. That's really pretty
All
short.
right.
Can walk back through.
So I'm going to go, well, first of all, I would just like to say that my understanding of the process at this point is that with this, with these use standards, we have an opportunity to talk staff through any minor changes that we might want to see with them. And it doesn't affect the main ordinance with the definitions and that we had already sort of approved and agreed on at this committee. And so if we can clear this up, there is a potential that we could see this move forward for a new public hearing, if we can come up with something we all agree on this evening. So that is on the table. I do want to start at the beginning and just get everyone's consensus. Do we see these districts that Jesse has outlined as appropriate, and are we comfortable with them standing alone, or are there any additional places that we think need to be included? Yes.
This is just from my knowledge. I know the districts and what's there, but on the Winchester one, give me a landmark business that's there. I'm just trying to.
So on the east side, you'd have Walmart in the lower right
Jesse, you
hand.
did have a slide.
Oh,
If we
yes,
could go
yeah,
right to
yeah.
that slide.
Let me back up here.
Yeah.
That's just, so, I don't know, can you see my cursor? Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the Walmart parcel here. And let's see, what else do I know? This is, I think I'm getting this right. One of them is a Wendy's, one of them is a McDonald's, and maybe
Okay,
one of them.
I've
yeah.
got it now. Just needed some orientation.
Yeah, understood.
And does the Commerce District extend all down Key Road?
It does.
And is there any interest in extending this down Key Road by anyone? I'm looking for a poll here. Councilor Haas is a yes. Mayor Khan is a yes.
It would get restricted by the residential in the back eventually.
In the back eventually. Councilor Remy, is that what your comment was as well?
Yeah, it's, I have a map up where I'm able to draw distances, and you don't gain too much
Okay,
from 500 feet on that.
okay.
I mean, you do a little, but.
And
Yes,
Madam Chair,
ma'am.
I do just want to mention in terms of, there is commerce on the left side of Winchester Street, south of the roundabout. Because I believe the way it's written is it would go land with frontage on Winchester Street, south of Island Street and north of Cornwall Drive.
Yes.
So just that map, I think, would go down.
Is that Cornwall there, where that cursor is?
That's Kit Street there, and the one thing I wanted to know, there is commerce there, but there's a daycare center.
And it's
I
also
know
the
from
hotel.
personal experience.
And there's residential, so I don't
Yeah,
think.
right here.
Yeah.
So Kit, and then Cornwall is right here, I believe. I can pull it up, but there is commerce down this way as well. So it is potentially there, but again, the 500-foot buffer may
Restrict it.
restrict it. And that's, I came up with that because I wanted to push it south, and then I did some measurement and thought, oh, that's not gonna work.
So the lot that's adjacent, the roundabout, there's a large lot there
This lot,
On
I
the-
believe that's
no,
state.
other side.
Oh, this is state property.
on the
Both.
right-hand side, yep.
This is zoned industrial.
Okay. Okay. And, yes, Mr. Clancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the sake of zoning purposes and stuff, I don't see an issue incorporating that parcel west of the roundabout, because, I mean, we can't factor in, the daycare will prevent one from going in now, but is that daycare always going to be there? I don't think we should factor what's existing there from preventing something going in there.
That makes sense. I believe the way that it was written in this original, just going back to read through, land with frontage on West Street, land with frontage on Winchester Street. So the current language, as it reads, is land with frontage on Winchester Street, south of Island Street, and north of Cornwall Drive. The storefront of such a business shall face Winchester Street or be in a plaza where the storefront faces the parking areas that have a common boundary with Winchester Street. So I do believe
The language now would include that.
the language now will include that. Okay. Counselor Jones?
I just want to ask, instead of creating these restrictions in 3 different zones, wouldn't it be better to create an overlay and just have those restrictions apply to the overlay?
I think I don't know if that would be creating a whole new zoning district essentially, although it's an overlay. This would just be creating a use. and setting that use aside with area restrictions, I think is how I would put it. I don't know, Mara, if you have a difference of opinion on that subject.
Yeah, no, I agree with that statement, and I think Mr. Rounds did he kind of copied what is already in the zoning ordinance as far as use restrictions for,
The
I forget what it's called, a
adult-oriented
sexually oriented
Yep.
business. So this is, we have precedent for this in our zoning ordinance, so it's actually creating,
It's using our standard process, I get, or a language,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Counselor Remy.
Thank you. Directly north of the three on the left, top left.
These guys,
Those
yeah.
goes. I think all three of those lots get knocked out, because that's a single family right above that.
Right.
So all three of those lots are within 500, to give a scale on 500 feet, the whole thing from the very top to the very bottom is 1,500 of what we're showing. That
Gotcha.
section there is less than that. So 500 feet knocks out all three of those top lots.
Gotcha. And probably this lot as well.
Yeah.
Depending on how you broke the lot up, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what is happening is the language that we're using to define the area opens up lots, but what the intention of the committee is to really look at trying to push this use into really larger commercial structures.
It is similarly written to the adult-themed businesses
Yes.
language, which, I mean, I think that was the intent with how it was written.
Yes. We have a question? Yes.
I was just going to ask if we look at the West Street.
Absolutely.
Yes, we can go through them all.
I'd just like to go back to the Key Road
Okay.
and wonder if the south side of Key Road going further back, I mean, there's an auto dealership, there's a
Hotel.
hotel. I mean,
Even the north side.
there's
of Key Road,
commercial
right there.
land there that
We can
could be.
include it, absolutely.
And it must be far enough from the residential areas to allow for,
I mean, I think hearing what the interest of the committee is, we can include that in the proposed zone. As Mr. Clancy said, uses change. Not that the zoning will change on the residential lots, but uses can change, and so it could open up areas that are currently not available.
Yes, I think that there are large parking lots and commercial places that could potentially house this type of use, so I think that's reasonable. And I would just identify the length of that by basing off where those residential areas are and pulling back for the 500 feet.
Perfect. Will do.
Okay, let's
sorry,
take
let's
a
go
look
back to
at
West,
West
yeah.
Street. So, can you orient us here? Is the Colony Mill
So Colony Mill is this parcel.
this parcel? Okay.
Yeah. And I would note here, these parcels, this is single-family and two-family homes, which would then, again, knock out these smaller parcels, but also trying to fit a 20,000 square foot facility in those parcels would be difficult anyway.
Yeah, you'd be building a multi-story structure.
Similarly, it would knock out both right after the street.
Yeah, these as well.
Okay, yes, Ken.
So, I mean, Colony Mill is not a single or a duplex, but it's residential, so
It is in its current state, but what is its underlying
It's
zoning?
zoned commerce,
It's
yeah.
zoned commerce.
Yeah.
So in its current, sorry,
Yes,
in its current use, wouldn't be allowed to be used, but if the whole property turned over to something else, it might be.
right, like
Might
if
be,
they
yeah.
decided to completely
Kicker.
change their operation
Actually,
standard.
no, it would be allowed right now, because the use is, it's not allowed
Oh. single-family or two-family?
500 feet of single-family and two-family, and abutting a residential zone. So you could actually, first floor could be your charitable gaming facility and residential above.
Interesting, or you could build it separately on the
Yeah,
parking.
right.
In the parking.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yes,
mean,
Ken?
residences are residences, people live there.
Absolutely.
So why would they not get the same sort of protection that somebody in a house does? Even if they rent the house, they don't own it. I mean, if I lived in Colony Mill, and people will live there until something changes, why wouldn't they get the protection that someone in a duplex gets to not have a gaming facility? I'm just asking.
I mean,
don't
it's a
understand that.
good
Great
question. I think that the theory is that the residential use in Colony Mill may not last forever, and the owner of the property has the right to use it the way they see fit. We could alter the language to make it harder to do that, recognizing the value of multifamily residential developments as well, which is absolutely valuable, yeah.
Right.
I
so-
mean, if having a gaming casino is more lucrative to the developer, but right now it's much, as you said, much needed housing, we would be encouraging to get rid of housing and make a gaming, I mean, that's really far-fetched, but, I mean, it doesn't seem to align with what we want to see happen in the city.
Sure.
And it seems a very viable place that a lot of people live, and it works, and we need it, so.
And I definitely hear what you're saying. I think that the root of what your comments are, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is that we really shouldn't be distinguishing between single-family and two-family homes and multifamily housing when we're talking about the proximity to these facilities. Because and I'm playing out the scenario as you were speaking and trying to think of what would be the thought process to be pro allowing this. And we have changed our land development code to allow for commercial uses with residential above. And in most cases, when you're in I don't know how many units are in the Colony Mill currently, but when you're in a large residential unit that is in the commercial zone that has businesses on the first floor, there is an expectation that there's some sort of commerce going on, or potentially commerce going on. The question is, we have restricted this particular use, like other uses that we've deemed appropriate in our code, and how far do we want to go? So that's a great question for this committee tonight, and we might want to just stay on this for a minute. Do we want to keep the limitations for the restrictions for one and two family, or do we want it to be for larger multifamily structures? Councilor Remy.
Thank you. On that comment, I think for the most part within the city, I think it's covered by the fact that you can't be directly adjacent to a residential zone. This property, if my memory serves, was created through a variance that there technically should not be housing here. And a variance allowed there to be housing on this particular lot that should not exist.
But doesn't our current zoning allow for residential above commerce?
It does.
In
So-
DTC or in commercial?
No, in commerce.
In
So-
commerce.
So in future, the developer or the
Would not
owner
have
could
had-
decide to put anything on the first floor that's allowed in commerce, and then have up to 3 stories of.
Up to 4 stories, yeah. And I think, but when the Colony Mill apartments went in, they did need a variance because at that time, residential wasn't allowed in commerce. And I did just want to quickly note the thought behind the thought process when we were talking about the single and two family. The reason why we put that in there is because single family and two family, well, not allowed in the Commerce District. There are historic neighborhoods where single-family and two-family homes exist that feel more like a neighborhood, so we put it in there specifically for those neighborhoods that are zoned commerce, that have single and two-family residences. Otherwise, I think the adjacency to a residential district would cover it.
For that, yeah.
But it doesn't, because we've just found a property that is an outlier, and this committee has to decide whether or not we feel comfortable with allowing it or not.
Absolutely.
So I need some feedback from Counselor Williams.
I feel like, multifamily homes are a feature of an urban environment, and so, perhaps a bit more activity around there is to be expected. What I wouldn't like to see is a situation where a landowner decided not to develop residential on the second floor of a commercial building because of the presence of a casino.
Yes, Ken?
And I agree, I mean, downtown, mixed use, lots of activity, but we just spent how many meetings not wanting these gaming facilities downtown or in the downtown growth area? Because we're expecting one day, there'll be residential, and we didn't want that kind of use mixed with people living there, whether it's mixed-use apartments or whatever. And so, although I understand there's some, history on the site, the way it's zoned, it's sort of the same situation. If the first floor turned into regular retail and restaurants, which there is a restaurant there, that would be quite nice, I guess. But maybe not to sacrifice apartments at this point. But a gaming facility, we didn't seem to want it downtown or in the downtown growth. This is commercial, but it's sort of
On the edge,
form-wise, it's more like the other sites.
Could I make a quick suggestion that might resolve, because I think this one parcel may be the outlier. We could say Commerce District along West Street, west of Island Street. And that would eliminate the parcels on the north side that aren't going to ever be developable because they're adjacent to residential, and then it would eliminate the Colony Mill. That's not to say that the other places couldn't be developed for residential with retail on the first floor and commerce above, but that's not how they're developed now, and that would be up to the developer to decide. Maybe there is a situation where commerce on the first floor and, there's something that would be better for them than a charitable gaming facility,
So I tend to agree with that change. Can I kind of get a show of hands? Do we have a consensus that we would be comfortable with that change?
Would you just define that change?
Oh, to the change that we would be west of Island Street. Yes? Counselor Remy, you're a no? Yes? Any other no's? Yes, Brandon?
Are we sure that we're not within that 500-foot buffer of a single or?
At the Colony Mill, we would not be. Yes, Counselor Haas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that west of Island Street parcel, south of West, is going to be eliminated anyhow by the residences across the river. I'd like to speak to the parcel north of West Street on the river there, just east of the river. I think that's where the Starbucks is. I don't know if that would be an ideal spot, but I would fear that impinging upon the park adjacent to it.
Of a residential? Is that corner lot on the river residential?
I think that's where the Starbucks is.
No, on the opposite side of the road,
Oh,
south.
south of West Street on the east side of the river,
On the west side.
west side of the river. I think those are business,
Those are residential.
Yeah, Richardson Court.
Richardson Court and Bridge is
Gotcha.
all residential, yeah.
yeah. But the ones that front on the road, I think, are mostly businesses.
Okay, so now we've moved our marker. So the north side of West Street, those large lots west of the river, are those within 500 feet of the residential? I'm counting on you, Counselor. So those large lots,
This area.
are they within? They're all wiped out, okay.
So it's really this is what we're looking at for,
All right, so what is that street to the right? Yep,
this is, oh boy. Brooklyn Way.
so do we say to the west of Brooklyn Way? Counselor Remy?
At some point, we might as well just say they're not allowed, right? It's like, what we're going down is a path of making it so there's like two lots in town where you could possibly build one. That's why, like, the lot where we have the Colony Mill, there was a gaming facility there up until a couple years ago on that lot. And it was never a problem that I know of, at least. And it's one of those where I get it that there's residential on that property. It's not condos. It's, so if they were to put one in there, people have the option to go. I love that there's housing available there. I don't think they're gonna knock out housing to put in the casino. I don't think that's something we have to really worry about. But if they were to rebuild that outbuilding as a casino again, I don't know that it's inappropriate.
I don't know that it's 20,000 square feet either.
Yeah.
Ken?
That was my question, the scale of the one that was in that other brick building, I don't think that was 20,000 square feet. What is 20,000 square feet? It's like a store. What's 20, I'm trying to get what 20,000 square feet is.
So as an example, the large building that used to house New Hampshire, I think, housing on Court Street, the barn, the red barn building that's being re-sided as white currently, that's 20,000 square feet.
So it's a pretty.
Substantial.
And we're saying that's just we're talking about a serious gaming facility here, right? Not a mom and pop, so we're talking about a gaming floor being 20,000, but then they're gonna need other stuff to make it viable, restaurants and other things. So shopping, probably retail. So it's gonna be a bigger building.
Right.
It's gonna be a big building. So these big sites are where it wants to go.
Roberta?
So I am having a hard time picturing 20,000 square foot building with parking and everything else to go along with it in the West Street areas, but now that you put that in perspective, like that building on the end of Court Street, yeah, I see that. I've said it before that keeping a gaming facility sort of near areas in Keene where other businesses could benefit is not necessarily a bad thing. And that would maybe be good for West Street. But if you go out toward the Target, at the plaza area out there, obviously there's a lot more room to have a gaming facility. So I can see pros and cons for both areas. I think 20,000 square foot with all the parking and everything to go around it on West Street's a little scary for me. It's a little scary for traffic and
I think
everything else.
You have two commercial lots that are pretty viable. You would have, I don't know if the current tenants would agree, but like the Hobby Lobby area, the Hannaford's Hobby Lobby
Out
area.
back behind where there's just more
They
land.
would have to take over current storefronts. And the same thing in the Kohl's Plaza, like if they took over the entire left side of that plaza, you potentially could build out a 20,000.
It's a traffic nightmare already to get in and out of that plaza.
I think West Street is on our agenda.
Yeah, I
to
know,
review.
yeah, right. So we'd have,
A
that would
couple years
go.
away, but yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would just say, again, this is all very helpful, and we threw this out there with the expectation there would be this conversation. I would also say that there's the West Street rebuild that hopefully will be coming, and then also we can, for a development this big, we can say, you're going to have traffic impacts at your entrance. You're going to have to make changes to that area.
Do we have anyone for the first time? Mayor Khan?
I want to agree with the challenge of 20,000 square feet being a standard for the facility. I think that's, I don't know where we've gotten that from, so maybe there's some, you didn't just pick that out as
Did not pick that out of
thin
the
air, but I mean, this room is about 800 square feet, is my guess.
Yep.
And count the ceiling panels. And yeah, it's a monstrous building, and it's not only is it 20,000 as a minimum, but it's a minimum for the gaming floor, and not for any other space that might be abutting a gaming floor, like food area or administrative offices. Point being, I think the scale of it is hard to fathom in Keene.
Sure.
Counselor Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 20,000 square foot number, I think, comes from, someone from the licensing department suggested that's a number as a minimum where a casino would be profitable. They have to be that
The
big.
number we got, that may be true. We got it from another community.
Okay, I think there's other casinos around the state that are much smaller, that, you know, in the
So,
9,000, not
The way that
including our
that
own.
works generally is that it's made up in, those casinos are owned by multiple, or one entity owns multiple casinos and makes it up in volume. And so when the Gaming Commission was describing this, they said, you know, the reason that you see slot machines in gas stations is because, not that the single slot machine or the 3 slot machines are going to be profitable, but that the person who owns them in 5,000 gas stations, and they make it up in volume. And so, in general, there's ratios, with our state laws, and I don't want to misspeak, but there's ratios for table games to historic horse racing, and most of the profit through gaming facilities are made up with historic horse racing machines, and those machines, so in order to have those machines, you have to have a certain number of square footage of gaming tables, and that starts to define what a profitable area would look like. And I think what this committee has to decide at the end of this conversation is, because I agree, this is a monstrous facility, right? So we're basically looking for one entity to come to Keene and build a charitable gaming facility here. I could not imagine 2 or 3 of these facilities here. We would start to become Reno or some other place that would not look like Keene anymore. What we need to decide is, do we want that? Do we want one large facility that drew tourism, or do we want to go back to the concept of spread out small boutique casinos, which may or may not be financially viable to their owners?
May I continue?
If I can just
Just a second.
build on that, what my point is, we're saying a minimum of 20,000 square feet. I mean, certainly somebody could propose a 20,000 square foot space, but they could propose something smaller.
They could not.
The way that this is
This is
worded
written,
currently.
yes.
Yes.
And that is intentional, I think, by the staff, based on our conversation, because if they propose, you know, if you were looking at a 5,000 square foot facility, let's say, and we go back to Key Road, West Street doesn't necessarily work so well, but if we go back to the Winchester Street location, you could have a 5,000 square foot facility near the Home Goods. You could have a 5,000 square foot facility at the Applebee's area. You could have a 5,000 square foot facility, based on what we just said, down by like the Key Road Car Wash. And now you have 3 gaming facilities in this one zone that are all 500 feet apart, which is our rule. And, you know, is that the growth that we want to see for this use in our community? And that gets to the root of this whole revisit back here at Joint Committee. Council definitely was not comfortable with the way it was written, and and wanted to see a lot more thought put into it. I think this process, coming through staff, coming through Joint Committee, coming through public workshops, hearing from the Lottery Commission, has created so much education, and not that we are going to stand and say that we understand it all completely, because unless you're owning one, I'm sure there are nuances to it, but I think that we have learned so much about what makes these work and what type of person they draw and how they impact communities, and what some of the red flags are or the green flags are, that we needed to have these conversations and really as a group come up with what we think is the best strategy for this type of use in our community. And that means Do we want to see a bunch of small, like, are we gonna, if we want to go back to the basics, we can go back to the basics. Do we want to see a bunch of small boutique casinos, or do we want to see one large facility? That's a first question we have to answer. If the answer is we want to see one large casino, which might be all that could happen in Keene, there is a moratorium on historic horse racing licenses. There is not a moratorium on charitable gaming facilities, table games. There is a moratorium on historic horse racing, and the state did that because the state was uncomfortable with small boutique charitable gaming facilities popping up everywhere, which is what was happening. And when the state created the ability for charitable gaming facilities to exist, they did that with the impression that they would get several large facilities and that would take up the market share. But that's not what happened. And they got very uncomfortable with the way it was spreading, and they looked for a way of slowing that growth. And the way to do that was to take away historic horse racing, because that's the moneymaker. And if you take away people's ability to make money doing something, they're not gonna, it's a market force. So they restricted that. Those restrictions are there are 3 different pieces of legislation in front of this state legislation that will be voted on in June. And the result of those votes will determine what we potentially will see here in our city. The first one is that the moratorium will disappear. The second one is the moratorium will extend for 5 years. And the third one is the moratorium will extend indefinitely. And the 5-year and the indefinite pieces of legislation both have provisions for up to 5 to 7 additional licenses for individuals who've already applied. Currently, there's one license holder in the city of Keene, and that license is tied to the municipality. That person cannot take their license and go to Concord and move their facility. That facility has to operate in our municipality. So the way that it sits right now, the expectation is that for the next 5 years or for indefinitely, that there will be a moratorium on historic horse racing, and that there will probably be no additional licenses issued that will come to the city of Keene anyway. So that's not they can overturn that, like we said, there's no perfect, that daycare center is always going to be there. We don't know what the state is going to do. We have to operate with the expectation that that at some point these could come back around. But the will of the state currently is that they want to see this slow down. And I think that's point was very well taken by myself and by other counselors, because there is a component of this type of industry that we have to decide, how much of that do you want to see in your community? And I think that was the realization from the state as a whole. So here we are. We could be talking about what do we want, a dozen 5,000 square foot facilities, and the state is going to tell us next month that there will be no more facilities at all. The reality is, what we've made the decision at council is that we've been talking about, there's a current license holder here, and they have expressed interest in expanding their operation and moving their operation. So we have that as a certain. They can stay right where they are, and they would be perfectly fine. But we have to make decisions based on the fact that we know there's a current license holder, and we know that they have interest in relocating at some point potentially. So what do we want that to look like when it happens? And we need to choose areas, and we need to create these standards so that we get, as a community, what we want, and that the license holder doesn't just get to do whatever they want, because in the absence of these rules, they have free reign. So I know it's a lot of background and education. I hope it brings everybody a little bit more up to speed on the decisions we're making here tonight. But we've got to start back to what our comfort level is with the square footage size, and then that might change some of these lots that we would think would be appropriate, and we can hopefully move forward. Councilor Remy.
Thank you. looking at most of the large lots that we're highlighting, like, hey, this could be a good one, most of them directly abut residential. Just zoning map, the trail that goes behind that large lot that's zoned high density. So it wouldn't be allowed there.
The trail is zone high density?
It's orange on I'm looking at our map.
Can we
It's-
pull, Jesse, can you
Yeah, I
pull
can,
up our map for all of us?
And then on the behind Hannaford's Plaza, that lot behind there is rural. I'm looking at the same thing you are. So. So both of those would be knocked out, in theory.
The way it's currently proposed, but that could be changed to be a distance similar to the other one, so that it's a distance from, the building would have to be a certain distance from the zone boundary versus just having a whole lot that's adjacent be knocked out. That could be a potential solution.
And that one is really funny, particularly because that looks like that trail is partly commercial and partly high density.
Yeah, I'd be interested, I mean, it's a trail. It's actually, so this, I believe, is a mistake, because this is now telling me it's downtown edge. So I'd have to do a little bit more research.
So that's flagging up for me. If there's one drop of it that's downtown edge, it's just picking a zone. I had the same issue when I looked at the one behind that's rural. It picks up downtown, or it picks up commercial because the driveway into it is commercial, but then it drops into rural.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the first problem that I see that we need to address is changing the language to the way Mary identified, to have a buffer by feet versus by zone.
But that lot would still be within 500 feet. It just depends on
The
if you have a
building.
building versus lot, yeah.
Yeah, the building can't be within 500 feet of a residential zone or resident, yeah. Okay.
And just tuning up my statement from before, some of those lots on the West Street side, the Melanson property, the Keene Inn property, the back of some of those properties is outside 500 feet from housing. If you go to the very back of those lots.
Okay.
There's a nice nifty tool in here where you can drop a 500-foot circle on a property, and it just puts a circle. So I was able to identify that the backside of those properties is potentially within it, or potentially eligible.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start to keep a checklist. I don't know if anyone else is doing that. So buildings, are we gonna use 500 feet? That the building needs to be 500 feet from the residential? From a residential, if the building in the Hannaford's Plaza?
The Hannaford building is 500 feet to the boundary line. It's within 500 feet of the boundary line, the back line.
So you have to knock it down.
You have to build something forward into like where the shopper news.
From a residential home?
Residential neighborhood, residential district.
So from the
So
whole
this is,
district?
yeah, rural is right here. So we could reduce that.
So what if we go back to Counselor Jones's suggestion of creating an overlay district? Instead of trying to identify each of these
We absolutely
lots
could.
with some sort of boundary?
Okay, yeah, we could do that.
I don't know what that, I'm trying to understand how that would be different.
Because then you could. it
Just say
wouldn't
it's
be
allowed
like-
here.
You wouldn't have all of these standards. You would just say, these are the areas where it is allowed, and you would outline it and,
Well, we could do that through the use standard. I could just drop the 500-foot boundaries. I could just say it's allowed in on these parcels. So that additional language in the use standards, we could just remove.
Ryan, you looked like you had something to add.
I had something to add about the mayor's point about 20,000 feet, the conversation we were having before. What's the current licensee square footage? What is that?
Don't have that off the top of my head.
I think the whole building's about 9,800 square feet.
On 2 levels.
On 2 levels. Yeah.
On 2 levels.
No,
Yeah.
90,000 on 1 level.
9,800.
9,000.
I'm looking.
I couldn't find it. It wasn't on the tax card.
Roberta?
I mean, I think we really need to revisit the 20,000 square foot minimum,
Okay.
because that changes how you fit it, wherever it's going to fit.
So what is your proposal?
I mean, his question about the current casinos' dimensions, I mean, they seem to be doing pretty well where they're at. I
They're
mean,
one
they're
of-
surviving,
Yeah, they're
pretty
one
well.
of many holdings by that company.
yeah. Well, right, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, space-wise, do they need, I just wonder if the 20,000 square foot minimum is necessary. And that might free up more areas if it's not so large.
Yes, Michael?
Are there a precedent for that 20,000 number, other communities are other communities using a 20,000 minimum? It'd be interesting to maybe get I'm not sure where the spirit of the discussion is. Are people in favor of considering 15 or 10,000, or are people thinking, oh, it's gotta be 30,000 or 40,000, you know?
Yes.
Where I think there's probably a balancing here between trying to contain things where we think they should go, but also not being so restrictive that there's only one available lot in the county that, or in the city that could go. So I'm curious, and I think you were trying to probe at where people are thinking
Yes.
in terms of the 20. Do we think that's a good number? Do we think it's too small or too big?
In your opinion?
I would say it's maybe, I would consider a slightly lower number than 20,000.
Okay. Do we want to just come down the line?
I would consider a lower number.
Lower number?
Same, like 10.
Lower number.
Yes, Ken?
Just so you said you had a precedent of where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, a number of communities in New Hampshire have chosen the 20,000. I would say that most of those communities that have come up with standards thus far are, and I think this has been in the background of the discussion, they're seacoast or more central southern New Hampshire. So a different planning environment, a different commercial environment than we have here.
Okay. Smaller? Or same?
I would keep it the same. I mean, because part of this conversation was we wanted to attract, or maybe have this person build a really, sounds like a nice facility, a good venue, not a fly-by-night thing. And so when you get into that scale with the food and with everything else, maybe even a hotel attached to it, I don't know. But it sounds like that's driving one really nice facility for our region here, rather than maybe two smaller, less thens. So I'd stick with the 20.
So the total building is 95,000 square feet. The casino itself is about 10,000 square feet that exists today.
95,000.
Is the total building.
And the casino's 10,000.
The casino's about 10,000 square feet.
Yeah. Yes, because they were looking to expand to 20,000.
I'm good. If it came down to 10,000, I would be okay with it. I like the idea of having a 20,000, having a larger, but that total space I think is about 10,000, so.
Currently, yeah. Armando?
I would say 10,000, smaller.
Roberta?
I mean, I can understand that a business plan for a casino would be a much better plan at a larger footprint, a 20,000 square footprint. But for our purposes, to try to plan for that in certain parts of our city, it just may not fit. So if we come back to 10,000, then we have more opportunity to place it in other spots.
Harold?
I think I'm okay with leaving it at 20.
20? I prefer to leave it at 20 just because I want to see one facility that we would be able to monitor and understand the comings and goings of versus many smaller facilities that could create a different environment for our community. Mayor?
So as a minimum, I would support 10,000 square feet.
Counselors? Counselor Jones?
I have no problem with 10,000. Remember, we're not, New Hampshire isn't out to attract the high rollers like Connecticut is. New Hampshire has a minimum bet of $25.
Maximum.
I think that smaller casinos would work.
Counselor Williams?
I prefer a smaller casino to a larger casino, so I would say no minimum, let the market decide.
Counselor Haas?
So I think I would prefer no minimum, because I think we're stepping on the feet of entrepreneurs who might find a way to make it profitable on a small scale, be it, and the issue of state licenses aside, wherever that goes, we can control this by selecting the zones and selecting these distances, rather than putting a particular impediment upon somebody's imagination who wants to do something.
Okay, so I think, I didn't count, but I think that 10,000 square feet seems to be the average consensus. So I would look to move that language. That doesn't solve a lot of our problems here tonight, but it does get us started. I think we've made a good first decision on something. So we've now adjusted that these facilities could be a little bit smaller. We have to look at this language, though, because we spent a lot of time talking about this at a previous meeting and narrowing down these areas, which is where we wanted to see these facilities go. So how do we create language that's appropriate for the lots that we have in mind, that you have highlighted in the areas that you had originally district within the language, without restricting so many of them?
So my recommendation would be, if we went with the 10,000 square foot minimum, and then either reduced these buffer distances or eliminated them, you could get a long way to what you're doing. I do want to, this may be going off in a wrong direction, so please don't follow me if you don't want to go there. But the overlay district, just to sort of try and nip that in the bud, an overlay district is useful if you are trying to say there are lots of zoning districts where this might be appropriate, but we're looking at certain types of land regardless of zoning district. But if you're saying we only want to be in commerce and we only want to be in certain commerce zones, it's not really appropriate for an overlay. You're done. You've said these are the areas, and now you're getting down to what are the, again, use standards. What are the things that are going to affect how it gets developed in the areas you've already selected?
Can you
If that
put
makes
the
sense.
map of the city back up for
Yeah,
me?
absolutely. Let me zoom out a little bit.
Oh, gosh, not that far, please.
Sorry. Too far. Let me zoom in then.
I even wore my glasses this evening.
Does that help, or? More?
So I want to get most of that commerce zone back up here, like
Okay.
centered and then brought back up for us.
So let me, I feel like I'm, perfect. Let's go here.
We call the spreadsheet TV at work when someone has to
Oh, yeah.
live do
Yes.
everything for us.
So these are the three commerce districts that are being, that I heard and thought could be useful. That's also where the sexually oriented businesses
Are allowed.
are allowed.
And so why the restrictions inside the commerce zones that we've identified?
We could take those out and just say, these are the commerce districts, these are the physical geographic areas that we are allowing it, and disregard the 500-foot limits. The one thing I would keep in mind is, and maybe this is just my puritanical upbringing, but keeping that, let's not have it adjacent to single-family and duplex and multifamily house. Just the character,
yes.
character distance sort of
So,
thing.
I know that we ended up sliding down this road because we wanted to parse out the nodes. And I want to make sure that we don't lose language that does that for
Yep.
us. We do not want to see those small neighborhood commerce areas get impacted by any sort of change that we might ask for this evening. Does this committee feel comfortable taking away some of those boundaries that were written in these use standards, leaving in the setbacks, the 500 feet setbacks from daycare centers, from places of worship, from single-family and two-family dwellings, and giving some more freedom to these now smaller facilities to find places that work for them? Counselor Remy.
Thank you. It might be a helpful point of reference to put a 500-foot circle on here if you're.
You
so
said
that
there was a
3
way to do
lines
that.
and then draw.
I don't believe you.
Draw.
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 And then
Look at
draw a
that.
circle. And then it says 500 is what you have it set to, so you just click on, so if you do the north, you just click once on a commercial, yeah, that's a 500-foot circle. So,
Oh, I clicked twice.
and then you,
Here.
yeah, trash can, and it'll clear off. But if you click on the yellow property just north of McDonald's, just to, yeah, that one. House is roughly there. That gets knocked out, right, for an example.
Can we make that 250? Can we make that circle
Sure.
250?
Let me trash.
This is very helpful.
We have the tools.
I think that's feeling a little better. Does that feel better for everyone? Yes, Brandon?
Are we doing the building to building, or like how are we, what are we
Here,
deciding on the
Let me pull up
buffer?
that language.
I
But
would
we
say
had
building to
discussed-
lot, but
So gaming building to.
gaming building to
residential lot.
edge of lot.
I mean, I think that makes more sense, whether it's 250 or 500.
So if we change these to 250, all of them, 230 somehow.
Can we look at the map again? and
Well,
just
this
see
is
how
also
that
not the
plays out?
language that we have in our packet.
Okay, okay, this should be close. Let's go back to the map, yes. Yeah. Oh. Is that helpful?
And Madam Chair, I think the way the language in the packet is currently written, it would be from, it could be read as being from building to building. So we might want to just clarify, like, that it would be from the edge of the building of the gaming facility to the lot line, if that's what the board wants to do.
Okay. So the one that we do have to discuss is if we make those changes, no charitable gaming facility shall be located directly adjacent to a residential zoning district. We found that there were a lot of those lots that do abut residential zoning districts. Do we want to strike that if we have the lot to building distance buffer?
This language here.
Yes, Ken?
If we change it, I mean, right now, I think condominiums or multi-family buildings, more than 2 units are protected if they're in a residential zone, but if you,
Correct.
if you take that out, then they're not anymore, because they're not single-family, and I just can't, I'm not understanding why we are eliminating condominiums and apartment buildings, and why single-family and duplexes seem to have to be
To
covered.
take preference. I mean, that's a fair question. We have to decide what we want from this. This committee needs to make those decisions.
Okay.
Mayor Collins?
Yeah. I'm stepping back a little bit from the detail. I hope that's helpful. It's helpful for me, because where I started with a physical image of this was to anticipate if there was a street that divided a commerce district from a residential district, that commerce district would be eligible, not the pocket districts, but these 3 in particular along these pathways that Ashbrook, Winchester Street, and West Street were suitable commerce districts for the location of a charitable gaming facility. And so the distance I'm having trouble with, because I see us drawing lines as opposed to using some of the physical boundaries that are already established, like West Street and Route 101, and that are clear definitions of a boundary around a commercial district.
Mr. Clancy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to agree with the mayor. I think the highlighted areas that were presented are suitable. I just, with the language, we're seeing issues, but I think if you could change the language to allow those lots that were highlighted with some amendments maybe to West Street, I'd be in favor of the highlighted.
Okay. So, can we go back to the West Street side?
Yeah. Here, sorry.
So, are we all in agreement that west of Island Street was the appropriate amendment to this? All right. How about, for the purposes of not making sausage here at this committee, that we leave it in the staff's hands to create language that provides a buffer between the building that could potentially be constructed and residential lots that are existing, and captures the highlighted places that you have shown us, west of Island on this slide, and if we go to the next slide, south to Kit, and I forget what the other, Cornwall.
Cornwall. Okay.
Counselor Remy.
Thank you. I would almost rather just define the lots as we're going through, because it's not that many more lots than what we're talking about. And if you go back to West Street, sorry, making jump back and forth.
No.
The southern lots in the middle between the CVS Plaza and, yeah, those small lots, I know it would be really hard to build a 10,000 square foot thing on there, but those should not be eligible lots. Those are directly adjacent to single-family homes.
They wouldn't. They could, the highlight could just go away.
Yeah, but those, if we dropped those smaller lots off, we left the large commercial lot, the Kohl's lot, and the CVS
Northern
lot.
lots, yep.
And sure, across the street from Melanson and those, if they ever wanted to convert them to casino, I think that's fine, the northern ones. But I think if you just knock out those middle ones, and to your point, knock out east of Island Street, I think you're good on this map.
Can we
Okay.
take out the Starbucks lot also,
Uh,
and not have the facility in the park?
yeah, fair. I mean, it's a small enough lot, I think you could put it on there anyway, but yeah, I get where you're.
Okay. Do you have those notes?
Sorry, the Starbucks lot, I'm now.
It's the top of CVS, it's that little, that
It's
one
this
there.
here?
Yep, that's
I thought that was the, oh, no.
Starbucks.
Yeah.
I live right there.
I was thinking of the other side of the, I was thinking about the Sud bucket.
Okay, so we're gonna take out the north side of West Street, east of the river,
Yep,
and the Colony Mill
this one. So these parcels here,
will be stricken.
And then these
south of
parcels.
West, the smaller parcels.
all the way to
Avon.
the, yeah, all these?
I think you would be okay. I can't read that street.
This is Avon and Pearl.
After Pearl,
Yeah, you'd probably be okay.
you would be
So
okay
this way,
to leave
okay.
those.
All right.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I know we want to get,
just a
was it
second.
me or?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I personally would leave in the Colony Mill.
Oh, so is your microphone not working?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have to have a mic for you,
For
not
the
for us
audio.
to hear, but for the
recording.
minute taker and for the community members that are watching at home.
Gotcha. I would personally leave in the Colony Mill, just as that parcel. I feel as though when you live in mixed use, there's that notion of there's gonna be business on the first floor. And I feel like that's a very plausible space to have a casino in, or, sorry, charitable gaming facility. So,
Do we know what the square footage, it's a good point, now that we're allowing for much smaller option, can we find out quickly what the square footage of that original casino on that lot was?
Quickly might be harder than,
It was a separate building, yep.
oh, of that smaller building? Yeah, we can figure that out.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I just, another idea just to kind of throw into the mix is, as I'm hearing people talk about what lots they think would be appropriate, another approach that you could consider is having a minimum lot size as the use standard versus defining along a road what areas. Just an idea. You could still do it the way that you're doing, where you're picking out the specific sections of road, but it seems like correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're identifying the larger lots as being appropriate.
That is true. I just don't know what we're identifying as a lot size without you telling us. Like, these lots are an average of X.
Yeah, if you gave us the list, we could come back to you with a proposal. So just.
Yes, Mr. Clancy.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My reasoning for eliminating that particular property, the Colony Mills, was I hear a lot about Gilboa Ave
Yes.
redevelopment, and I see that property kind of anchoring that downtown core, and it's because of its historic charm being part, even though it's not in that zone, it's part of that charm. And so and the residential aspect of its current use, but I just think it would be more appropriate to shift it out of that downtown possibility.
Okay, great, thank you. Ken?
Thank you. I've been thinking about this, the whole setback and the buildings being away from houses and things, and I know we're trying to nail this down, but I'm thinking that when people are in the building, we're not going to hear them. They're inside. I assume the building will contain the noise of probably whatever goes on in the building. Then they come out in the parking lots. Now, it sounds like the parking lots could be next to the residents and the houses. And when they come out in the parking lots, that's when people are talking, there's lights going on. You know, I'm not comparing the gamblers to the people who go to the Y, but I live right by the Y, and there's 5 in the morning, there's Zumba music, I don't hear it. But sometimes, and it's not bad, but I would imagine it's amped up maybe at a gaming kind of facility. The lights are going on, the headlights are going on, people are talking, you know, people are yelling and screaming, having fun, good times, but the activity is outside. That would affect the neighborhood and the houses, not so much in the buildings. So I'm wondering if we're setting the buildings back, but the parking lots are going to be what's edging the neighborhoods. So I'm making it more complicated, but I think it's really where the bother would come from for a neighborhood, besides traffic. So something to just add to the sausages.
Yeah. I mean, it is the commerce zone, and there is an expectation that there would be vehicles and activity happening, and that is already existing. And so I think for me, the larger concerns would be what other types of activities come along with casino use, and potentially how much police activity there could be, that sort of thing. So unless cars coming and going, my concern for the neighborhood is the type of use, not necessarily the amount of traffic. Because the traffic, if it was a hot, somebody decided to actually put in a great store, like a Trader Joe's went in, like you would have traffic there till 10 o'clock at night and people coming and going. We would not be having this conversation. So I think for me, it's a little bit more about the unintended consequences of this type of use versus the fact that it's we are talking about the commerce zone. Councilor Williams?
Just to speak to Mr. Costa's point, I would specifically be worried about buses and bus idling.
Yes.
In nearby residential districts, so maybe that specific portion of activity should be farther
from-
removed.
So I've got a list going.
I do want to point out, in our use standards, we do have a whole section on parking. It includes screening from bus and truck parking must be screened from public rights of way and any abutting residential properties. So,
Councilor Remy?
Thank you. Just that little building we were talking about, the old casino, was 5,500 square feet, just under that from what I can see online.
that's what I come to.
And on your list of things for us to go through, just a thought, and I don't know where I would vote on it, but putting a max size as an option for folks if there was a interest in that. I personally don't know that I want to put a max size on, but I think it's something that I've heard a couple different times of, like, not necessarily wanting big casinos. So at least having a conversation around that of whether it's 20,000 or 50,000 or whatever the number is, as one of the things on the list.
Gosh, a 50,000 square foot casino.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just to check your figures there, Councilor Remy, is that the entire space? Because it had a second floor space.
So this is square footage. I don't know if the city would have counted the the second addition as another, but the way it's listed on the city website is 5,445.
That says living area.
Yeah. So total area, but I don't know if that includes the second floor as a separate. The second floor was a small portion of the footprint.
And I guess I'm raising it so that when we come up with a visual representation of what 5,500 square feet is, or 3,500 square feet, we have something that's more accurate, and I'm sure planning department can help us envision what we're talking about.
I definitely think it's helpful to have a understanding of like what the size of that facility was, what the size of the facility that's currently operating is. I do want to talk a little bit about what Ryan brought up. I think that we came back to this committee and said, we don't want this in growth, and we don't want this in our downtown. And so that Colony Mill lot does really create that boundary, that edge. I think that the city is putting an incredible amount of money into the infrastructure on Gilboa, and we've talked a lot at council about the potential for all of those American family properties along Gilboa. It has been in the news that they are going to be offered for sale. We could see development down there. We do have really great zoning already set up for that area heading down to the Colony Mill. And at some point, we might want to look at attaching the Colony Mills lot to that downtown, I don't know what it's called, what the Gilboa area is called.
It's downtown growth right
Downtown growth right now. It wouldn't be growth anymore. We would be completing we'd be completing our growth out. But when Gilboa does finally come up, it is going to create that connection down to the center of Keene, down to the Colony Mill. And that area in our hopes and dreams will become a similar Main Street feel. The properties we're requiring to be built out to the edge of the sidewalk, that they have retail on, or commercial uses on the first floor, residential above. So we're looking for something very similar to downtown, and I think that Colony Mill does just sort of anchor that on the other side, and past that is when you get into more of those box store, big lots, big parking lots. So I'm comfortable leaving it off the map. Okay, I think we've lost a member. So I think we've done some great things so far. Just to recap, we have a change in the language to building to lot instead of building to building. We've reduced it to 250 feet, We've reduced the size from 20 to 10,000. We want to reiterate that we want bus activity and idling to happen away from the residential side of the buildings and to be screened. We also have identified on the 3 slides that you've shown us what lots we would like to be included, and we're asking that you create language appropriate to make sure that those lots don't have reasons that would
Preclude them, yeah.
I'm missing my word, but it would just not allow them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten through. Yes, Councilor Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we revisit the proximity point, item I on our packet, as far
Item
as
R.
distances between gaming facilities?
I don't have an item R.
I'm sorry, item I. I is in I. Ichabod.
No charitable gaming facility shall be located within 250 feet of another.
Yeah, I don't think our intent was to change that to 250 feet, since we were focusing on the residential. And I had suggested even 1,000 feet
From each other?
from one charitable gaming facility to another.
Okay.
I think that would help us limit the number.
All right, so that brings us to parking and traffic. Our last section. Basically, here we have the parking lot design shall incorporate bus parking and bus loading zones. Commercial loading zones shall be screened from public rights-of-way and abutting residential properties in accordance with section 9.4.4 of the LDC. Traffic study shall be required. Bus and truck parking is required to be screened from the public rights-of-way and any abutting residential properties. Off-street parking shall be provided at a ratio of not less than 0.75 parking spaces for each gaming position. All parking shall comply with parking requirements, and 2% of required parking shall be equipped with electric vehicle charging stations. So I think that we've already talked about buses and screening. That brings us down to the 0.75 parking spaces for each gaming position and the electric vehicle charging stations. Yes, Ken?
Thank you. So there's going to be buses, which bring a lot of people, and this is per gaming position. So the buses bring 40 people. I don't know what fits on the bus. Cars, I guess there are going to be those people who come all by themselves to gamble. But there's lots of people who come with other people, multiple driving. So I'm just wondering if we need that much parking and how you calculated that, because that's a lot of impervious surface and it might not be needed.
Right.
And I don't know how to get to that answer, but I'd just like to consider that, because people will be coming other ways too.
So this was stolen from another jurisdiction. We could go down to half. I think 0.75 is the lowest we have in the LDC right now.
Do we know what standard we used for the current facility?
It depends on, so I believe on the current facility was treated as if it were an indoor recreation facility, so I'd have to look up what the on-site parking requirements are for that. Oftentimes, so it's hard to compare this to other uses because depending on the type of use, the parking requirement calculation is different. So I'm not sure that there's any other use that would have gaming positions, for example. So other uses usually use, like an office, it's a parking space for every 200 square feet, for example, or it's a parking space for every 1,000 square feet, or per unit or per bed. So I'm not sure how to compare it to other uses in our table, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's
Well,
a different direction than we normally go.
Indoor recreational facility would be an interesting comparison because it seems to be working.
I would also say in this particular case, most of the parking is occurring, they purchased parking from a lot across the street. So they're using Center of Keens parking.
But are they using that to accommodate their patrons, or are they using that to accommodate the city's
Patrons.
requirement?
Oh, that's a very good question. That's,
There-
is our requirement.
There's no parking requirement at that location because they're in downtown growth.
There you go.
Yeah, so they didn't have any required parking at this location, but they've just purchased it for what they need.
Okay. I think, yes, Harold?
Is there a definition for gaming position?
It's a seat at a table or, say,
Or a
in
machine.
position or as a machine, yeah.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
And then the parking requirement for a recreation entertainment facility indoor is 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, or 1 space for every 4 seats.
Okay. 1 space for every 4 seats.
So actually, that's much lower than.
So that's 0.25.
Yeah, 0.25. So we could go to 0.25, yeah.
What are we comfortable with, Michael?
I hear the concerns about runoff and surface water, but this use is, some of the research is this use tends to be longer term too, right? So
Yes,
they're gonna be
people
there
stay.
for an hour, 2 hours, and that
Much
would
longer.
push us more towards needing more parking spaces, and again, environmental concerns set aside for a moment. If part of the goal is to restrict where this goes, having a requirement for more parking spaces would help achieve that.
Okay. Anyone else? Ryan?
Thank you. I would like to keep it similar because ideally, I would like to increase the electric vehicle charging stations to 5%. And so I think I would like to increase that to 5, so I would like to see the current parking standards staying the same.
Okay. Roberta? No? Yes?
I just would hope that we could keep as many standards that we already have for other, situations like malls or movie theaters or restaurants. So there's as little new, standards having to be written just for this one use.
Okay. Counselor Williams?
I think the 1 for every 4 seats would be a good way to go. If, the business owner decides they need more parking spaces, they're welcome to build them, but I don't think we should force parking that's not needed. We do have, certain required parkings, especially around malls and that kind of thing, and what you end up seeing is, 99% of the time, those parking spots are empty. I would like to see a situation where, the market decides how many parking spaces there are, and if that means maybe there's a paid parking spot lot somewhere nearby or something else, those can be figured out, but I don't think we should be requiring parking spaces that may not be necessary for the environmental reasons. And just to go back to the bus idling, it says there needs to be screened from public right-of-way and abutting residential properties. I would also say they should be screened from conservation-zoned land, because I did see that there's one lot that's kind of next to a Schwiel at River Park. I would hate to have buses idling in that spot right next to the river.
I think we took it out.
I would be happy to take it out.
I was on that one.
No, there's a
but-
different one.
Oh, there is another one?
Yeah, there's
That's
another one
Ashwillet?
on the opposite side of the Ashwila from Starbucks.
Okay. And I do think that there are potential, depending on how these developments were done, that some of this property, there are other, like there was the trail that Councilor Remy pointed out earlier, so I would be comfortable adding in additional screening requirements for conservation. Okay. So parking requirements. All right, do we want to split the difference here and do a 0.5 parking? I love a compromise. And electric vehicle charging stations, we heard someone who's interested in increasing them. We might have some interest for that on this side of the room as well. Anyone else? Yes?
Do they have to be a specific level?
I'm
Does
sorry?
does it have to be like level 2 or level 3, or does it not matter?
That's a Jesse question.
We didn't put a level in there. I think that, I actually would turn to Mary on this. I assume the general trend is to push towards level 3 across the board, but level 2 exists everywhere, and that's gonna stay for a long time.
Yeah, I'd say, so we should probably state level 2 or higher, because a level 1 is just a normal outlet, so, yeah.
Okay. So can we clarify that in the?
Sure. Is the standard to put the number 2 or the?
Okay. So the amount of spaces, are we comfortable at 2%? What, can we do a quick math, and what are we potentially talking about? We have 10,000 square foot facility, we have
I mean,
500 seats, they need 100
I would just go
parkings,
with,
or they would need,
if you had 100 parking spaces, that's two electric
Two
lots if you had 200.
okay.
Instead of trying to figure out how many positions they would be, just think about the number of spaces in comparison. So 2 for 100. Now I'm having trouble thinking of a 100 lot. Just comparison, Hannaford is probably 200 or 300 spaces, I would guess, maybe more. Like that whole area,
From left to right.
yeah.
Okay, so in a space, let's just say on the left side of the Hannaford lot, in front of Hannaford, probably is similar to 100 spaces.
Yep.
Do you want to see 2 electric charging stations, 3, 4, 5? What's our bandwidth for this? Yes, Ken?
I mean, this is not going to be built for a very, very long time, I think. And so there will be a lot more electric vehicles, I would expect, then, than we have today in infrastructure. So I would think you'd want more than less. And the market will probably dictate that anyway. So people will come if there's electric charging, and if they can't charge their car, they're not going to go there. So, yeah, I mean, up it to, I don't know what's reasonable, 5%, but it just sounds like we're ahead of the market a little bit. Okay, I had while I'm talking, there's nothing here that says the developer can't charge for parking, right? He can charge, if they're, right, they can actually,
I suppose, yeah.
okay. Because most casinos, big casinos, they charge for parking.
Well, it would depend on the lot and who owns the parking.
Right, assume, yeah.
You mean, someone who moves into the Riverside Plaza would not own the parking that they would be using, so they would probably not be able to charge. All right, anyone else? Yes.
I would leave it at 2, and then, when it comes time and someone comes before you with an application, you can ask for more, or they can put in more if they want to.
Okay.
Because the infrastructure for it is kind of expensive.
Yes, Councilor Remy.
I was going to say the same thing. It's going back to a similar position to where you had on the parking of let the market define it. I think to your point too, I think people are probably going to end up putting in more if electric vehicles really take off. If it becomes not electric vehicles and it's hydrogen vehicles and we have this in our code, then it's a waste, right? So it's like one of those where I don't know. It just seems like a thing that we don't want to
Do you wanna
dictate
strike it?
unnecessarily. I'm fine with 2% if we want to leave it in there, but I wouldn't go any higher.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Harold?
Yeah, I would support that position
Okay.
Councilor Remy just presented.
I think that lets us wrap up the review. So we'll leave that one alone. Okay, so do we need to highlight what I have on my list, or are you comfortable that you have all
I
your
think
notes?
we've got it in the minutes. I can go back through if I missed anything. I do think that, Mary, do you want us to go back through one more time? You're looking at me like, say it again. No?
I guess it depends on, are we coming back to you
Yes.
at a continued public workshop? Then
That's
I
my
think
next-
we can just go back through the minutes and.
Yeah, I would prefer that, just because I think there's still a lot of
Okay,
wiggle room left. I would love to have gotten to a point where we could go, but I don't think we're there as a group.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Counselor Remy?
The only one I brought up that we didn't talk about is if, I don't know if there's interest from the body in putting a max size on it.
Max size.
Yeah.
Not seeing any. Okay. All right, so I think staff is asking us to continue the workshop because they want to bring us back their amended notes before we see this fall into a B version. I bet the city attorney is probably happy with that. Nodding, yes. Okay, so do we have to have a motion for that, or?
I
can
always
we
get this
continue?
wrong, so I'm going to look at Mary.
Yes, you'd want to continue it, and you have to mention the date and time
Okay,
of the
so,
next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to make that motion? Or do you?
I would move that we.
Microphone.
I would move that we continue the workshop to the next regularly scheduled joint meeting on June 10th.
I'll second, yeah.
A motion by Mayor Khan, seconded by Harold Farrington, and do we have any questions on that motion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. So that allows us to move on from item 3 to item 4, which is our new business. Did staff have anything that they wanted to add?
Yeah. Just quickly, I think we wanted to highlight a couple things we have coming down the road that we want to, we're going to be coming to you with, and we want to get your thoughts now before we move too much further on short-term rentals, and you know, something in the LDC about that. And then the commerce nodes, we heard interest from this body to address commerce nodes, potentially with a different zoning district for those, or trying to fit those into one of our existing zoning districts. And then there's a third one, Mary.
So currently in some of the residential districts, there's a minimum lot area for the first dwelling unit, and then you have to have additional lot area for each additional dwelling unit after that. So for example, just to give rough estimates, but like in high density, I believe there's the minimum lot area, and then you have to have like an additional 4,000 square feet for each additional unit. Medium density, it's like, 8,000 square foot for your lot, and then for each additional unit, it's 5,000 or something like that. It's just as an example. And so one of the ideas that we'd like to discuss with you is whether or not that still makes sense for the community, given the housing crunch, or if it's something that we want to revisit and maybe take away the extra lot size requirement per unit and look at controlling through other types of zoning dimensional standards like impervious coverage and things like that.
I would hopefully get all of your support, and this committee has been very progressive in trying to create opportunities for growth in the community, and say, please put together a suggestion and bring it to us.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Counselor Jones.
Can I add one more issue to your list?
Certainly.
It came up at PLD last week, was when we were discussing the cottage house ordinance. We brought up possibly removing the banning of private roads from the LDC.
Yes. So the other thing that I would like to see, and I know that this is unusual for the Joint Committee's agenda, but at our council, we have a more time list that hangs out at the bottom of our agenda. I would love to see that added to this Joint Committee agenda.
Absolutely.
And so that we don't have to all recall what we're hoping and waiting to see, that it's a constant reminder for us at each meeting, and that we have these 4 items: ADA, the new lot requirements, the banning of private roads, and I've already forgotten what our 4th item was.
So the 4 things were short-term rental, lot
Short-term
size, yeah,
So Airbnb, lot size, private roads,
and the commerce nodes.
and the commerce notes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if we can get those 4 abbreviated in some way
Sure.
onto the agenda for our next meeting, that would be great, and then we'll know to be expecting updates from you guys.
Absolutely.
Our next meeting is going to be Monday, June 10th, 2024, and we've made it all the way till almost 8:30 this evening. Thank you guys for all hanging in here. I think we did some great work, and this meeting is adjourned.